While taking care of your physical health is absolutely a huge priority, equally as important is taking care of your mental health. Having your mental health in check is extremely important, especially with these polarizing times in our world. We especially need to normalize taking care of mental health in the world of music. For many years, we've heard the tragic stories of musicians and others in that space who have succumbed to mental health challenges when they otherwise felt there was nowhere else to turn. For more information and how to support this cause, visit Live Beyond on Instagram at live.beyond27 or on Facebook at Beyond27. Thank you for your support.
The Earnestly Speaking Podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking Podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heartthrob in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too evil and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly Podcast, recording this on Tuesday afternoon, January 13th, 2026. We are going audio only with this one today, as we are going to review. First off, I'm actually a week late doing this podcast, number one, so I got to apologize for that, first off. But it is also our 2025 Earnestly Speaking NFL Awards, as we give out all the awards for this year of the regular season accomplishments here on the show. And again, the awards, I think my awards are better than the NFL's personally, better than the AP, just my opinion. But first, before we get into that, before we get to the review and all that, we had some breaking news just before we got started this podcast. After 19 years, Mike Tomlin has stepped down as Steelers head coach. Of course, this is following the Steelers 30-6 wild card loss to Houston Texans last night on Monday Night Football, which broke some weird streaks. Number one, it was Mike Tomlin's first loss at home on Monday Night Football. It was also the Steelers' first loss on Monday Night Football at home since 1991. Pop quiz, guys. Do you know which team that was the last team that beat the Steelers on Monday Night Football? Because I know the answer. I actually watched that game randomly before I knew about that streak about a year ago around this time. It was against the New York Giants, and it was the year after the Giants had won the Super Bowl. It was Jeff Hostetler's the year he was starting quarterback for the Giants. The Ray Hanley year, of course, disaster. We had 8-8 that year for the record, but some contextual things there. But it's been a long time. Mike Tomlin, of course, I guess you could say controversial because there's a lot of Steelers fans very split on him. Whereas a lot of Steelers fans want him gone. They're kind of stale. It feels like they're stale. Now, this is one of the most remarkable ones in NFL history because he finished his tenure never having a losing season in 19 years. Now, if you tell half the fan base that, they don't give a shit. Okay, they don't care. Okay, a record of 193, 114, and 2. He tied the legendary Chuck Noll for the most wins in franchise history. Now, right now, speculation early is that Tomlin might be taking a break from coaching entirely. He might be doing TV for a little bit. But I'll say right now, Tomlin can have any job he wants at this point now. Remember, at the time also, too, Mike Tomlin was the youngest coach at the time to ever win a Super Bowl. So this is a very accomplished brother who's done a lot in this league. And I'm gonna tell y'all, Steelers fans, this, and I'm gonna be respectful here to you guys. For the ones that, especially ones that wanted him gone. And I'm not saying there was not a case for that to be so. But here's what I'm gonna say to you guys, bigger picture. As a Giants fan who's been going through the same old rinse repeat of coaches for the last 11 years since Tom Coughlin was let go or mutual part ways, wherever you may agree happened with that scenario in 2015. Be careful what you wish for. I'm just saying. But Mike Tomlin, a great, he's gonna be a Hall of Famer. Obviously, you don't do what he did there in Pittsburgh, and not because of a Hall of Fame. But he left his own. I mean, look, a lot of people speculate that they probably forced him out, and maybe it's true. Maybe it's a mutual setting, or maybe he's just really burned out. He looked burned out this year. He looked very tired this year. So I'll say that much. But salute to Mike Tomlin, one of the greats in the league, and he's still, to me, a top 10 coach in the league. He can have any job he wants now. If the Giants decide to interview him and he wants to go to the Giants, I will take him in a heartbeat. Just saying, I'll take that brother in a heartbeat because that guy knows how to change cultures. And there's a lot of teams who can use a Mike Tomlin right now on their roster. Just saying, Steelers fans, you got what you wanted. At least the ones that wanted him gone. You got what you wanted, but now don't come back and bitch at me in 3 to 5 years when your team still sucks. And not only not winning 10 games a year or 9 games a year, now you're 4-13 and with no hope. You can't have both ways. Okay? You have good examples in your own division of teams that have struggled with coaches doing the same carousel of coaches. Cleveland Browns been doing it for years. Okay? Hell, they had a Kevin Stefanski lasted 6 years and let go his ass, even though he won 2 coach of the years. Just saying. You have examples in the division all around you. So, again, shout out to Mikey T for a great job, and he'll have a job if he wants to next year or the year after next or the year after next. So a great one has been available now. So this now coaching carousel has heated up now. John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski, and now Mike Tomlin now on the market as we speak. Things are going to get very spicy in this NFL off season. All right. So as for the season that's passed by, again, I'm a week late doing this particular podcast. I typically do the NFL awards the week before wildcard weekend, the week after the week 18. But last week, for some reason, I just couldn't do it. I wasn't feeling up to it. And sometimes that happens. So I'm going to go and review where I was, my overrunners this year, and see where I went, how I did. So we'll do it the same order that I did last year, entering the year, division by division. NFC East, first off, the Eagles. Let me see. They went 11-6. I went over. I was wrong on that one. What a disaster for the Eagles, dude. End of the year, AJ Brown's be gone. Jalen Hurts, God bless him. Love Jalen Hurts, but there's a lot of criticism thrown his way too. Also, I think next year's a huge year for Jalen Hurts, for Nick Sirianni. Because look, I know you guys won the Super Bowl last year, but the Eagles fans are not patient. You saw Doug Peterson lose his job literally a year after he won a Super Bowl in 2017. So they're not patient. So there better be some turnaround very soon. So all right, the Commanders went they went 5-12, right? 5-12. Yep. I went over anyway, and I was wrong on that one as well with the Commanders. Struggling year for Jane Daniels struggled this year, bro. Struggled mightily this year. A lot of injuries to a lot of the key players. Next year, another big year for Jane Daniels because he was the in the 2024 draft, he was the crown jewel. When it was all said and done, and yet this year, the guys like Drake May, guys like Caleb Williams stepped up this year. So now the 2024 draft is looking awfully good now. Jane Daniels now, also he's falling behind yet. He gets 1 year reprieve. Next year should be a huge year for one Jaden Daniels. All right, the Cowboys this year, they went 7-9-1. I had the over on that one. The over with the number of 7.5 wins. I had the over. I lost. I went 7-9-1. Actually, I was wrong on that one. Let me make sure I was right about that one. Hold on 1 second. All right, I was wrong on that actually. So they went 7-9-1. I had the over on the Cowboys, and I was completely wrong on that one. Like I said, Cowboys doing what Cowboys do, fail every year, right? 30 years now. This shit, 30 years. Just saying. All right, New York Giants. the number was 5.5 wins. I went over in that one. They failed with 4-13. But there was some promise with this Giants team. With Jackson Dart worked out pretty well for the most part. He's got to stay on concussion protocol and stay healthy. And there's some talent there. They lost a lot of guys during the year. But I think this Giants team next year, now obviously we'll see what happens with they get a new coach. Obviously, well, Ryan Double's gone. They're interviewing coaches now. Now you got Mike Tomlin in the market now, especially John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski. We'll see who they get as head coach. And maybe the turnaround starts next year. We'll see. All right, NFC South, the bane of my existence. The Buccaneers number entering year was 9.5 wins. I went under. I was technically correct. I went 8-9. What a disappointing year for the Buccaneers, who started year 7-3, right? They were at one point, first half of the year, looked at as Super Bowl contenders, and they absolutely fell apart. Absolutely fell apart this year. Horrible year. Todd Bowles will keep his job, of course, but a lot of injuries too, also. But at the end of the day, they were getting healthy at the end of the year, and still couldn't find ways to win. So, all right, Atlanta Falcons. 7.5 wins was their overall number. I went over. They got there 8-9. They still fired Raheem Morris though. Still fire Raheem Morris. And I don't know if it's the right move yet, but they to be fair to Arthur Blank though, they are gutting the entire front office. So it's not a targeted move to Raheem Morris. It is the entire front office who got dealt with as well too. Carolina Panthers number was 6.5 wins. I went over as well. They got the over 8-9, won the division, nearly pulled the upset against the Rams on Wild Card Weekend. But they got a decision to make by Bryce Young. Bryce Young, look, he's a okay quarterback. He's not worth max money. He's not worth, I don't know, it was worth $40 million a year. And yet he is probably going to be due an extension this year, possibly. I don't know. Is he worth it? I have questions, bro. This Carolina team is very, very weird this year. I call them the zombie Panthers. They're quite frisky, but do I see them doing this same thing next year? That's a good they have a good receiving core. I'll tell you that much. And maybe they win 9 games this year. Tap out of 10. We'll see. All right, the Saints. The number of 6.5 wins. I went under. They went 6-11, right? 6-11. But I got to tell you, they were tough toward the end of the year. They ended the year winning 4 of the last 5 games. They might have found a quarterback in Tyler Shough or Show, or whatever his damn name is. Look, this was a team I entered the year. I said that might go 0-17. So the fact they got 6 wins is actually a successful year for the Saints, honestly. All right, NFC North. Detroit Lions. Overall number was 10.5 wins. I went over. I failed there. They went 9-8. This was a very, very disappointing year for the Lions. And like I said to you guys on the pod a few times now, the honeymoon period now for Dan Campbell is now over. Look, I'm not saying he's on the hot seat. He's not on the hot seat. I'm just saying the honeymoon period is over. Okay? You lost both the coordinators. It cost you something. It cost him a 6-game regression from the year before. Okay? Losing Ben Johnson, of course, and losing Aaron Glenn. But yeah, not saying the hot seat, but the feel good is now over. All right, the Packers, 9.5 wins was the over number. I went over. I was wrong. I went 9-7-1. Lost in the wildcard game against the Bears in a dramatic fashion. A lot of folks want a lot of Packer fans want Matt LaFleur gone. Unfortunately, them, he's working on a new extension there. That they had no business losing that game with the Bears on Saturday. I'm just going to say that. So I let down the year. Michael Parsons hurt end of the year. They looked like a Super Bowl team for the first half of the year, and then they just kind of went to a little bit of a tailspin, and they played a little better toward the end of the year, and then they kind of failed again at the end of the year. It's very, very, very Jekyll and Hyde team this season, and when they were playing their best football, they were definitely a Super Bowl contender. But there was moments where like, this team is weird. I don't get it. All right, Minnesota Vikings. 8.5 was the over number. I went under. I was wrong. They went 9-8 this year. And I got to tell you, the end of the year, the Vikings winning streak, missed the playoffs, obviously, but, there's questions with the quarterback, with J.J. McCarthy, and whether or not he is the answer long-term. But he needs another year. He was drafted pretty high. He missed the year 1. This year, he missed a chunk of time because of the injuries. So he deserves another reprieve. So they're going to go with McCarthy. And not for nothing, they have the staff to do it. Top tier defense. Now, they might lose Brian Flores to another team, a head coaching job. He's did an interview with the Ravens today, actually. But at the same time, he has weapons. He has a top 3 receiver in the league, one of the best cores in the league, receiving cores in the league. So there's something to work with there with McCarthy. He's had to get done. He showed promise in moments this year, but there were some moments where he was bad, really, really bad. All right, last team here in division, of course, Chicago Bears. Number was 8.5 wins. I went under. I failed in that one. They went 11-6. The Cardiac Bears, they are now in the second round of the playoffs. Caleb Williams has bounced back in a big way. Got to give him credit for that, obviously. This Bears team is so weird. So weird, but they find ways to win. Was that 7 from behind wins this year? Being down in the fourth quarter. It's insane. It's insane. But they're here. You can't argue with it. All right. Then we have now, let me see, the NFC West. The Rams, the number was 9.5 wins. I went over. I got that one right. They were 12-5. Obviously in toughest division in football. Matt Stafford and company doing what they do, as always. Didn't win division, though, unfortunately for them. It's a couple tough losses this year, but again, you have a team, you have a division where the 2 other teams went 12-5 and 14-3. Let's say it's a good year for you guys still, and still Super Bowl contenders for record. Speaking of the teams that did well in the division, the Niners, 10.5 wins was the over number. I went over. They got that, but they went 12-5 with all those injuries. No Brock Purdy for half the year. You had no Fred Warner since week 6. Injuries galore across the board, and still finding ways to get it done. I think there's a real conversation here that Kyle Shanahan right now, not named Andy Reid, obviously, Kyle Shanahan is probably the best coach in football because how he schemes the way he does. But it doesn't matter what quarterback he has. Jimmy Garoppolo, Mac Jones this year, who may get some feelers this year from other teams, and Brock Purdy, what he's done with that, you got to give him credit. You got to give him credit. The guy is a phenomenal coach. Obviously hasn't won a big one yet. He's gone to Super Bowls, though. Hasn't won a big one yet, though. But this dude continues to find ways to win, no matter what he have. And the game was Philadelphia on Sunday. Same thing. No injuries. You lose George Kittle in the first half of the game. Still find a way to win the game. Got to give the guy credit. He's probably the best coach in football, not named Andy Reid. All right, the Seattle Seahawks. 8.5 wins was the number. I went under. I was dead wrong. Number 1 seed, 14-3. Seahawks might be the Super Bowl favorites in the NFC. We'll see about that. That's a tough gauntlet though, between them and San Francisco and the Rams and then the Frisky Bears. Again, a job well done by the Seahawks. Sam Darnold, another really, really solid year. Their defense played well. They are scary, and the fact that they have home field advantage too on top of that, it's gonna be something to really look at. Just saying. So all right. Arizona Cardinals number was 8.5. I went under. I crushed that one. They went 3-14. That was bad year. Probably see that's Kyler Murray in Arizona. I thought Jacoby Brissett played decent under the situation, but they played in the hardest division football this year. What are you gonna do? There's some really weird losses here too. Also, that Tennessee loss early in the year was pretty bad. But they went 3-14, man. They really fell apart. Didn't they start 2-0? They started 2-0, I thought. And then proceeded to lose 14 in the next 15 games. How do you do that? And of course, end of the year, a 9-game losing streak. So also part of the coach as well, too, in the process. So, all right, let's go to the AFC. Buffalo Bills, number was 11.5 wins. I went under. I was wrong. Let me see. Buffalo Bills. Yeah, I was wrong. 112.5. I was wrong. Josh Allen, another MVP type year. Won't win it. James Cook wins the Russian title. And, we'll go through all these teams in a second, and they won their playoff game against the Jaguars. If there's any year for Josh Allen to get to the Super Bowl and possibly win it, this is the year to do it. No Patrick Mahomes. No Lamar Jackson. No Joe Burrow in the way. The coast is clear. All the remaining 4 teams in the AFC are beatable teams. Respectable, but beatable. There's no excuse for the Bills this year. Even being on the road. It doesn't matter. There's no excuse. So, but great job by the Bills this year as always. The Dolphins number was 8.5 wins. I went over. I was wrong about 7 and 10. Of course, they fired Mike McDaniel last week. They also fired Chris Greer early in the year. Really, they are probably the team I'm most interested in next season because they have a lot, and I'm telling you, they have a lot of issues coming up. Cap issues, dealing with Tua's contract, dealing with Tyreek Hill's contract, dealing with that roster. They are for what I did a deep dive a couple of weeks ago. They are right now, I believe, $40 million over the cap right now going into the offseason. Okay, and that's before you even address Tua's contract. So whatever GM, the GM, they have a new GM they just signed. I forgot his name, but they have a lot of work to be done. And I wonder if whatever coach they get, will they get the runway to build things? Because this is going to be a massive rebuild. If they decided to cut Tua before June 1st next year, they're gonna take a $99 million cap hit. Okay, that's a lot of fucking money. Okay, and very much restricted. Okay, you have Quinn Ewers as the backup, who's on a rookie deal, obviously, but he didn't show any promise really that can say anything of significance. So the Dolphins have a lot of work to be done. A lot to be done. They could be one of the worst teams in football next year, depending on depending on the decision they make moving forward. But it is bad in Miami right now. All right, the Patriots number was 8.5 wins. I went under. I was dead wrong. I went 14-3 this year. What a year for Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, first year in as head coach of the Patriots. Probably coach of the year. We'll see. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But what a year for the Patriots. And they beat the Chargers also too on Sunday night in the wildcard game. Phenomenal story this year for the Patriots. They're back. Finally, the Jets, 5.5 wins was the overrun number. I went under. I was correct on that. They went, was it 4-13? Oh, 3-14. Jets, Aaron Glenn, probably deserves another chance, but I probably will get another chance, but that was rough. That was a rough one last year for Aaron Glenn. But what I will say is he should at least get an opportunity to turn it around. So some progress. But what a rough start for Aaron Glenn, huh? All right. AFC South. Houston Texans. 9.5 was over a number. I went over. I got it. But it didn't look that promising early in the year. They started 0-3. Okay. 3-5 by the middle of the year. And yet they end the year on a 10-game winning streak rather. Went 12-5 or whatever it is, 9 games, 10 games, whatever it is. They're red hot now. They beat Steelers last night. Probably put Aaron Rodgers into retirement. And Mike Tomlin quit as a result on the Steelers. This team is scary. Their defense is scary. Steelers didn't play great last night, but at the same time, the AFC is wide open. They have just as good chance as anybody in the AFC to go to the Super Bowl this year. I'm just going to say that. So job well done by D'Amico Ryans and company. The Colts number was 7.5. I went under. I was wrong. They went 8-9. However, they started here 8-2, and then the injuries can happen. Daniel Jones, who had a phenomenal most of the year, was at one point in MVP conversations to start the year. He gets hurt. A couple of injuries there. They went 8-9. This is how bad it was for the Colts this year. This is how bad it was for the Colts. They brought in Phillip Rivers off the streets for the first time in 5 years. Play football. Yes, Phillip Rivers played football, NFL football, in 2026. Okay? First time he's played football in 4 or 5 years. Okay? So that's how dire things were for the Colts. Anthony Richardson didn't play a lick this year, or played very little this year. So they have questions to answer too, though, because Daniel Jones got the injury fairly late in the year that could carry over to next year. He's due a contract very soon too. Also, he's a free agent. Also, lots of questions there. All right, Jacksonville Jaguars. When 7.5 was a number, I went over. I got that one. 13-4 this year. What a year for Liam Cohen, Duval. But disappointing loss to Buffalo in the Walker game. In the game they probably should have won. They had every chance of winning that game, but still a great job by Liam Cohen and company. Trevor Lawrence changing the narrative a little bit now. Not quite bust, but disappointment this year, second half of the year especially too. Turn things around. Lots of good talent there. Lots to build on with Jacksonville in the years to come. And then finally, the Tennessee Titans, 5.5 wins was their number. I went under, of course, and I was right about that. They were, in my opinion, one of, if not the second worst team in football this year, going 3-14 as well. Cam Ward, hard to evaluate him when he had no time to throw the ball. He had some moments here and there, but the team was so freaking bad, consistently speaking. All right, AFC North, the Ravens, 11.5 was their number. I went over. I was dead wrong. This one went 8-9. What a year for the Ravens. What a bad year. Lamar misses a chunk of time this year. Just never got really a footing. I mean, I remember they started like 1-5. Then they go on like a 5-game winning streak. They go 6-5. They get things together, and then they start struggling the latter part of the year. They had a chance to go to playoffs on the last game of the year, losing on a missed field goal by their kicker. John Harbaugh's gone, fired by the team. Yeah, we'll see how things are for the Ravens in the years to come. It'll be next year rather, because no coach, first time without John Harbaugh in 18 years. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. What kind of coach Lamar gets this time around. All right, the Bengals, 9.5 was their over number. I went over, and I was wrong. Now, Joe Burrow missed once again. That is the theme now. We criticize Lamar Jackson with his injuries all the time. Well, Joe Burrow is just as not worse than Lamar when it comes to missing time. They won 6-11 this year. Zach Taylor should be on the hot seat next year. Okay, and again, when people say, "Well, they have no offensive line." Yeah, but who told you these idiots to pay T. Higgins $3 million a year? Again, you have a elite quarterback for a reason. You don't need to be paying 2 elite receivers either. Okay, that's the whole point of having a quarterback in the vein of Joe Burrow. Stupid move. All right, the Steelers, 8.5 was over number. I went over. I was right. They went 10-7 this year. Of course, losing to Texas last night in the wildcard game. Mike Tomlin's gone. You know how it is with the Steelers. Obviously, it's just one of those things. We'll see end of the era. We'll see how they do, what they do, who they pick the coach. And I'm really curious in these next couple of years, because Steelers fans have been begging for this guy to be gone, a lot of them anyway, and now they got what they wanted. And let's see if they get the results they want now as a result. I have my doubts. I think I'll be honest with you, I think the Steelers team might be in real trouble, because not to say Aaron Rodgers was a savior, but he's likely retiring. And if there was any chance of him coming back next year, that's gone now because Mike Tomlin's gone. And they're getting old. They're getting old also too on top of that. So a real reset could be the making for the Steelers here. All right, finally in the division, the Browns was 4.5 wins was the over number. I went under, and I believe I was wrong. They went 5-12, in fact. So Myles Garrett wins. Myles Garrett actually get the sack record for single season sack record, well deserved by him. Shedeur Sanders, we'll see. Is what it is. He wasn't great. He had moments, wasn't great. They fired Kevin Stefanski, which I argued that could have been him tanking, in my opinion. But Browns had work to do as well too. All right, finally, last one. Chiefs. Oh boy, 11.5 was over a number. I went over. I was way off. They went 6-11. The Chiefs rebuild is here. Pat Mahomes gets hurt in week 16 rather. Missed the playoffs entirely. Travis Kelce could be gone. Chris Jones could be gone. Who knows what Andy Reid's future if Pat Mahomes misses all next year or part next year, how they approach next season, we'll see. But what a disaster for the Chiefs. What a disastrous year for them. All right, the Chargers, 9.5 was over number. I went over. I was right. But another disappointing first round exit. Justin Herbert now 0-3 in the playoffs. Some have this conversation about Justin Herbert. Top 10 quarterback, yes. One of the best quarterbacks in the league? Yes. At the same time, though, we judge these guys by what they do in the postseason. CJ Stroud has 3 wins so far in the playoffs. He has none. Okay? I'm not saying he's better. He's not better than CJ Stroud. I'm just saying that the results are the results. Okay? And offensive line was horrible toward the end of the year. And for the record, it wasn't even Herbert's fault they lost the game or they melted down late in the year. Because the Lions was horrible. But at the same time, you got to find ways to win. So, all right, Broncos, 9.5 wins was the number. I went over. I was right. They crushed 14-3. And yet, I still feel like they're a bit of fugazis. But maybe this is the week. Again, their defense is phenomenal. It's their offense I'm worried about. It's Bo Nix. I like Bo Nix. But I got to see more complete games from him. I don't see enough complete football from him. I see moments here. Maybe a full game here once every 5 or 6 weeks. But I never get the full Bo Nix experience. And until I get that, I'm going to have my doubts. Now, if Sean Payton is holding back to the playoffs, let's see. But I have questions about Denver. I really do. All right. And finally, the Raiders. 6.5 wins, the over-under. I actually went over on this one thing to be frisky. Oh, they were horrible. They were a disaster. They went 3-14, in fact, this year. So, yeah. A disaster. Pete Carroll's gone also from the team. Fired. Kind of shocking a little bit shocking. But they got work to do. Number one pick in the draft. Also for Raiders. So, all right. Before we get out of here, we have the awards. The Earnestly Speaking 2025 Awards. As I look up my notes here. All right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 awards I'm going to give out here. First award, most surprising team. To me, it's the Seahawks. I'll tell you why. I knew they'd be decent. I didn't think they would be this good. 14-3. And in doing it, and you can't say, well, they didn't need these divisions to collect the wins. No. They did this in the hardest division in football. And that's not even an argument. Again, you have 14-3 Seahawks, 12-5 Niners, 12-5 Rams, who many believe are Super Bowl favorites in the NFC. And to do that and then beat those same teams also to get there. You got to give them credit. So the Seahawks, to me, were the most surprising for me, not because they were good, but how good they were. And this is actually also the year after move up to Geno Smith and, a year move from Pete Carroll and all that stuff. And, yeah, it's surprising. It really is. Now, most disappointing for me, this might surprise you guys. People are going to say that I'm going to say the Ravens. And they're certainly the conversation. But to me, honestly, it's the Raiders. Because I did not have 3-14 bad on the docket. Look, I didn't think they'd be a playoff team. But I thought they'd be a 6-7 win team, frisky. They can't win more than 8 because they're in a tough division. But you have Geno Smith, who's a okay quarterback. Who do you have? You have Max Crosby. You have Brock Bowers. You have game breakers in that team. But to tail off the way they did is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. It's embarrassing even. So they're my most disappointing team of the year. Second of the year, Elliott Wolf, the Patriots. What a job. Look, remember when I did my owners when you started? And I said, I don't understand why the Pats number is so high, 8.5 wins. I didn't understand at the time. Now I do. It's because Elliott Wolf knows how to build a team. And building around Drake May. Phenomenal job. Look, yeah, you can sit there and say, easy schedule, but the fact they won 14 games and then they're winning games when you're supposed to, you got to give him credit for that, man. So Elliott Wolf's my second of the year. All right, my offensive rookie of the year, I'm going to go to Teteroa McMillan from the Panthers, receiver. Great job by him as always. I watched a lot of Panthers games this year, but he always see me always in the mix, always. All right, defensive rookie of the year, I got Carson Schweizinger of the Browns. My defensive player of the year, no surprise here. I don't give a shit if he went 5-12. Myles Garrett breaking the single sacks record for a season is incredible, okay? And doing it with that damn team, on that damn team, where you're always behind, where your offense is horrible, one of the worst offenses in the league, okay? Where the team depends on your defense, and he's still an impact player. And by the way, Myles Garrett, we need to start talking about him in an all-time conversation, not just now, because I think there's a real case he's probably a top 10, somebody say top 5 defensive lineman all time. There's definitely a conversation right now. All right, offensive player of the year. I'm going to give it to Jackson Smith-Njigba, receiver for the Seahawks. That dude balled this year. He absolutely balled. You got to give that guy credit. He was amazing. He was definitely the best receiver in football this year. I would say Puka Nacua is right there with him, but Puka Nacua also has Matthew Stafford. He has Devontae Adams on the other side, so he has a little more wiggle room. Okay? Smith-Njigba was just a monster this year. You got to give that guy credit. And Coach of the Year, in the same vein, there were many guys in this conversation. I consider Ben Johnson. I consider Mike Vrabel. Hell, I even consider Kyle Shanahan. I really, really did. But Mike Macdonald in Seattle, what he did this year with that team, okay, 14-3 was not on my bingo card. Okay, was there a world I see Seattle being a playoff team? Yeah, as a wild card, beyond the Rams and the Niners. But to not only win the division, the hardest division of football, but also to do it, and then get no one seed on top of that too also, you got to give him credit, man. But again, there's a lot of great coaching things this year to happen. The other teams out there I didn't mention who had great coaching stints this year. I said Vrabel, I said Ben Johnson. Sean Payton could have consideration. Liam Cohen, certainly that. D'Amico Ryan's turnaround in the middle of the year was amazing. There's a lot of really good coaching performance this year by many teams, but ultimately it had to go to Mike Macdonald in Seattle. And then finally, of course, the MVP, which is the biggest. And to me, this might have been the hardest MVP for me to choose. And a little behind baseball for you guys. The reason I delayed this podcast a week, part of it was because of the fact that I did not have this list done because I could not decide on at least 2 of these categories. One of them was this one. And people say it's a 2-man race between Matthew Stafford and Drake May. I disagree with that. To me, it's actually a 3-man race. I think Christian McCaffrey should have gotten more consideration for MVP this year. Okay? Real talk. And when I initially did this list, I had Christian McCaffrey as MVP. No, let me rephrase that. When I started this process, week 18, I had Drake May. Okay? Drake May in week 18. Then I flipped and went to Christian McCaffrey last week. And then a day before we record this podcast, I was still on the fence. So I scratched it off again, and I sat with this a little longer. I did more notes digging. I did more numbers crunching. I did more contextual, situational things that each of these guys faced. Because Christian McCaffrey has an argument because of the injuries around him, and it was 1-5 still. Drake May, and just being steady. And it wasn't until this weekend I decided that despite being the 5 seed in the NFC, I have to get Matthew Stafford. Here's why. He did it in the hardest division. Okay? He did it with way more restrictions around him. Tougher schedule. Okay? You're playing Seattle twice. You're playing San Francisco twice. You played the Eagles this year. The schedule. And he still put the numbers. The numbers are actually better than Drake May's. Slightly, but better than Drake May's. In fact, there's an argument I might put number 2 McCaffrey and number 3 Drake May. That is not a knock on Drake May. Drake May is fantastic. But when you have all these undecideds, you find little fissures. You find little advantages here. And to me, it was the amount of resistance that Matthew Stafford faced versus what Drake May faced. And the numbers that Stafford up. Now, there's an argument too also that, well, Drake May has a worse team. He has no weapons. Fair enough. And honestly, there's arguments for all three guys here. Not just May and Stafford, but also McCaffrey. But I went Stafford. He was consistent all year long. I think the only bad game he had this year was probably against the Falcons week 17. So, yeah, it was tough. It was very tough to decide that, but I had to go Stafford. So, anyway, that is my the Earnestly Speaking NFL Awards for 2025. It is also the podcast today for January 13th, 2026, rather. I am on X at EJ Christian 7. Earnestly Podcast goes all podcast catchers on TikTok, on YouTube, Instagram, of course. And until the next episode, we will talk to you guys soon. We got a lot of pods coming this week, so look out for that as we continue our trek down closer to Super Bowl 60. All right? Love you guys. Take care and see ya.